All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Please note that this meeting will not be live streamed. But I recorded
You did it?
and then post it as soon as possible. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? None. Public hearings.
Okay, so we have a public hearing for the purpose of considering a proposed zoning bylaw amendment under Section 34 of the Planning Act for the property located at 153 Barber Street in Espanola. And the effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the property from residential third density to residential third density special exception 6 in order to permit a clinical psychology office as the main use on the property. To date, we haven't received any written comments or any oral submissions with regards to the application.
There are no delegations.
So this is a public hearing, so you have to give anybody in the public.
Does anybody want to make any comments concerning the public hearing? None. Any council have a question or a comment?
I just want to make sure it's the place where the vehicle registration station was.
That's right.
Does that fall under town center?
No,
Or
it's-
very close?
That's right, it's the other
I
side of the
realize.
street
Oh,
is town center, so
Oh.
right now it's residential 30.
I see no problem with that.
Anyone else? Okay, there are no delegations. There is an opportunity for a question period pertaining to the agenda.
Are we on the main agenda right now? Question period? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, that's where I am.
Okay. On the agenda?
You got a question?
Yes, I do.
Then you better ask it.
Yeah, I will. Concerning the issue and the recommendation that's made on the Sherwood Park Trail, why are we wasting all this valuable time, people's time, staff time, on asking all the neighbors what we're gonna do, if it's okay, when we know it's not wide enough for a trail? So it's to me, it's a total waste of taxpayer dollars, and I find that the recommendation asking all neighbors, like I went and measured, you got 9 feet at best, you know? So, and you need 14 feet for a skidoo trail. So why are we asking something we know can't happen? It's a waste of resource and a waste of everything. That's my question.
It was asked for, so that's why. Don't make faces.
Okay. So it was asked for,
Yes.
we're gonna do it even though we know it was
Well,
wasting our time.
we'll take that into consideration.
Please do that, sounds better.
We will.
Yeah.
All right. Part 1 consent agenda.
Your Worship,
Yes.
I'd like to sever D4.
D4?
Yeah, D.
D4?
Yeah, please.
And D3, please.
And
D3?
C3?
No, D.
D3.
Yeah. D as in Don.
Got it.
Okay, so part 1 of the consent agenda moved by Councilor Ray Dufour, second by Councilor Bob Yocum. Be it resolved that items A1 to F5, with the exception of item D3 and D4, contained in part 1 consent agenda be adopted.
All in favor? Why? Item A1. All right, any, okay, adoption of minutes, A1 through In the A section, is there any, I'm sorry folks, I'm just having a hard time. In the A section, any questions or comments? Board committee reports. In the B section, questions or comments? In the D section, questions or comments? In the E section,
No, I was just going to comment on this DO project. I certainly like that the Community Services Committee approved that. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. We're always looking to provide leisure services within our community, and this is one that is a private enterprise, but is still utilized by many of our residents, and it's a very little cost to taxpayers compared to all the other things we do provide. So I was happy to see that was approved by the Community Services.
anyone else? So under the
No. E2.
D2?
E2.
D2, yes.
I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Under this agreement, will the fire, well, I see the fire dispatch would be taken care of, but how about the PWD, Public Works?
They're all going to be taken care of under the Northern 911, I believe.
Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes?
If I could comment, that'll be a separate agreement because it's just an on-call service rather than a dispatch. So it'll be a separate agreement and it will come to council in the future.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So in the E section, any other questions or comments? And in the F section, are there any questions or comments there? None. So we'll go to, pardon?
Motion's been read. Call it to a vote.
In D3 and D4,
They'll come in a regular agenda.
Okay.
So, did you want me to read the resolution?
yes.
So the resolution on the table is be it resolved that items A1 to F5 with the exception of item D3 and D4 contained in Part 1 consent agenda be adopted.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, so in Part 2 of the regular agenda, we have D3 that's been severed. So moved by Councillor Bob Yocum, second by Councillor Ron Duplessis. Be it resolved that as recommended by the Community Services Committee that bylaw 2863/18 be adopted, being a bylaw to designate taxi-only parking in the Espanola Regional Recreation Complex parking lot. That spot to be the first spot in the lot outside the pool area.
Questions or comments? Good.
Yes, I had a bit of a problem with that. The taxi driver that was here, the guy that owned the taxi cab service, he was more concerned about the loading and unloading, which is right at the front of the building. This, I don't agree with having to set him up behind the pool entrance or whatever that is there. I looked at it today and it's quite far from the building or from the doors. I still maintain that just the unloading and loading of passengers right in the front, I mean, it's already legal to do that. The only thing that had happened there for this gentleman was he went inside to pick up his fare, and on the way out he had got a ticket. I don't see where allowing him to park in a special zone, like in the special area, will help at all. We could amend that rule, like where he's picking up and dropping off. We could amend that so that it would stipulate taxi drivers, have the right to stop, pick up their fare, and then they have to leave right away.
Okay, Bob, Councillor Bob.
We did talk about it at the community services. This is not, they can still stop in front, drop, pick up, just like people do for hockey and everything else. This is if he has to leave the vehicle to deliver pizzas, for example. He can't leave the vehicle in front. So that's what the spot is for. So there's no reason that they can't stop in front, just as they do now, as they have for myself.
Yeah, okay.
As long as the driver stays in the car, there's not going to be tickets, there's not going to be a problem stopping in front. If it's a loading in
And
front.
I agree, because part of the problem was having the driver of the cab go into the arena for half an hour trying to find somebody to give these 10 pizzas to. Meanwhile, that car is sitting up there.
Well, if there would be Your Worship, if there was a place provided just up ahead from that, I mean, it's all painted yellow there, and I realize that. But if there was a place provided so he's not in the way in case there's an emergency vehicle that has to get in there or anything of that nature, I don't see it being a big problem. I think we're just, like, it's simple. Just let him deliver the pizza or whatever. Like,
But if an emergency occurs, his taxi's in the road.
well, that's what I'm saying. If he moves it up a bit, it's not. It
Would
would
that
be.
go past where the library parking is?
I was there today. I looked at it very closely, and there's a lot of room for one taxi. I'm not saying a whole bunch of taxis. It's a small town. I'm just saying a taxi can park out in front for a couple of minutes to either pick up a fare or drop off a fare.
All right.
Yeah, some people will need a hand to get in there, by the way, and he'd have to leave his taxi to do that.
Councilor Ron.
I felt much the same, Your Worship. I looked at it also, and I remember when the gentleman was here. I don't see right in front of the doors, but as Councillor Dufour said, we could paint one spot up ahead just the size of a car, and we could designate it taxi loading, unloading, 10-minute maximum. I wish community services would look at it again. With that in mind, that's all I'm asking.
And you have the buses unloading players there too, right?
I realize that, yes.
So there's
But
lots
that's
of
why I said
commotion.
far enough ahead.
There's lots of commotion right there. Councilor Bill.
I think the recommendation that was given by Community Service is reasonable. It's if someone needs to deliver something or go and get somebody who may need a little bit of help to get into the car, it may be a little bit further than it is from front, but it's still relatively close to that area, and it's not in the way of anything else. So I like it just the way it is there.
So we'll bring this, okay, Ken?
Why don't we just keep it simple, and the taxi can park in the parking lot, person can get out, the driver can get out and go into the complex, find the person, and say, I'm here for you, go back, get the taxi and park in where you should park, and the person comes out. It'll save a lot of hassle, where I'm concerned, because some of these concerns from administration are true in terms of who gets served. There's 2 taxis in town. Are they going to enforce this? To me, we're complicating things for too much for a simple solution.
Okay, what I think is Ron suggested. Did you have something, Heather?
Well, on a first come, first serve, like if a taxi pulls into his taxi zone and does his thing, whatever he's going to be doing, and then he leaves, it's whoever gets there in that spot first. But close to the pool is ample. That's a good spot.
Yeah. Okay, should we bring it up to leisure services again?
No, you got a motion?
So this is a motion. Did
Yeah.
we carry, defeated, or?
Leaders law 2853/18 be adopted being a bylaw to designate taxi-only parking in the Ethno Regional Recreation Complex parking lot. That spot to be the first spot in the lot outside of the pool area. All in favor? Carried.
Okay, so item D4 was also severed from the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Bill Foster, second by Councillor Ray Dufour. Be it resolved that is recommended by the Community Service Committee that the community safety zones remain the same.
Questions or comments?
I had brought this up some months ago, Your Worship, because it was brought to my attention by some citizens in the community. The province passed this a number of years ago for certain areas, namely hospitals, schools, parks, homes for the aged. We, the council of the day, I guess, chose to make it from when you enter the community at the bridge till you're almost exiting, well, I guess it was until we incorporated Merritt. It was probably the town boundary on the south side of Highway 6, south end. I think it defeats the purpose. When the province brought this out, I believe Espanola is the only community in Northern Ontario that chose to utilize it. Other communities, and I remember the chief in Sudbury coming out very strongly saying, we don't enforce speeders by giving them bigger tickets. We do it through enforcement. And I believe that. I think that's how you do it. I mean, if people want to speed and they got money, they can speed. Whether you charge them $100 or $400, they're still going to speed. I think it's reduced through enforcement. And with that in mind, I don't have a problem with the areas that we've had labeled, other than when you're past the old ABL school, which will become defunct at some point. I don't think there's another reason on Highway 6 until you get to the Clear Lake Park area. So we could say from, I don't know, Clear Lake Drive up until where it is now at the top of the hill on the south end. But I don't think we want to deter speeding through just a chance to make doubling the coffers on speeding tickets. If we want to do that, then we might as well put it throughout the whole community. I just think it deters from the idea of the motion that the province brought out, that we would use it in areas that were elderly, sick, or children. And certainly that's not the case going through the highway. If that's the case, then we might as well have it on Highway 17. And that's just how I feel, Your Worship.
Anyone else? Councilor Ray.
Yes, under the Traffic Act, the RSO Chapter H.8, under item 38, it says community safety zone in quotes. And parts of the roadway where public safety is of special concern, including roadways that near schools, daycare centers, retirement facilities, or areas of roadway with a high accident rate, is where these community zone signs are normally established from. And there's none of those things throughout our highway, is there? Like, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of accidents or anything. Nothing that would stipulate that we keep that safety community zone in.
We don't have any accidents there because it is a safety zone.
Well, I haven't seen people slow down because of it. I've seen people speed up because there's no police around. That happens, but everybody does that. But it's not the right thing to do.
For me, in my opinion,
Yeah.
there's too much foot traffic there with young people in the summertime, especially going swimming and riding their bikes and all of this stuff. There's too much of that, and I'm in favor of keeping the zoning thing right exactly where it is, because that's a deterrent.
Mm-hmm. Well, it really isn't. It becomes part. Half the people didn't even know it was there because they're so used to, I guess, to see it. I mean, Councillor Foster didn't know it was there for a while either. It just because, like, even the buses that go down there, I had complaints from them saying, why is this a community safety zone for? There's no reason for it. I mean, and we have a nice boardwalk for anybody to use. They don't have to be on a road. Bicycles, however, is a little bit different. They have a different, but they travel throughout Ontario. I mean, we can't canvass everybody. All I'm saying is that we should think twice before, making this part and parcel to Espanola
I think it's a great safety
Lots.
factor. I'm sorry.
well, okay, then that's fine.
Anyone else, Bob?
Yeah, I believe at one point I was considering that there was a recommendation taken around once or discussion that it should stop at the mall. And I think Councillor Millette raised a very good point about Clear Lake, and actually that I hadn't thought of, and since she lives there, she had personal experience, and she supports having it go on as far as it did. You might want to mention those points that you made at the community services.
Well, what I went on to say was living out there, especially in the wintertime when you're trying to make a sharp 90-degree turn. And I find now that safety zone is imposed there, we don't have the speeders we used to.
No.
And when you're trying to make a 90 on that hill, on a hill, to go up a hill, if you've ever been up that way. It's if you've got somebody on your butt, it's so hard and it's terrifying. Both directions, coming in from 6 towards the town, you have to make a sharp right again. You know, like it's just for everybody's safety. I mean, I travel that every day, and I would rather, if someone's speeding, get fined double. I don't see a problem with it. And how many has happened? Like, we don't have stats, do we, on how many tickets were given out?
They're available, I imagine. But
Well, let's get them. Oh, okay.
Can't, we tried. We asked, I mean.
But how many people are really charged double in that area? But the sign sure helps. They slow down.
Yeah. I'm with the same.
If I see the sign, I'm gonna make sure I slow down.
Tell you the truth, I didn't even know the sign was there either until I was told.
I know it's there.
Yeah.
All right. Be it resolved as recommended by the Community Service Committee that the community safety zones remain the same.
Recorded vote, Your Worship.
Pardon?
Recorded vote.
And there will be a recorded vote. Mayor on page 4. Ray Dufour,
Nay.
Ken Duplessis,
4.
Ron Duplessis,
Opposed?
Bill Foster,
4.
Heather Malott,
4.
Bob Yoakum.
4.
We have 4, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so. All in favor?
No, it's
It's already
Already done.
Oh, we all voted, I'm
Can't do
sorry.
that way.
Okay, so into the regular agenda, item G1, moved by Councillor Bill Foster, second by Councillor Ken Duplessis. Be it resolved that bylaw 2872/18 be adopted, being a bylaw to rezone the property located on Merritt, concession 5, lot 8, parcel 20554, land M77, lot 142, 153 Barber Street, town of Espanola. Zoned is residential third density to residential third density special exception 6 in order to permit clinical psychologist office as the main use of the property.
Questions or comments? Councilor Ron.
As I said earlier, Your Worship, that was a vehicle registration station. And from what I read in here, the new type of business, I guess we'll call it, we'll see far less traffic, I think, than when we used to have people going there to register the vehicles. There was sometimes 10 and 12 in line, and you're certainly not going to see this in this type of establishment, so I think it's almost like an R1. I see no problem with it.
Anyone else have a problem? Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
Item G2, moved by Councillor Heather Malott, second by Councillor Ken Duplessis. Be it resolved that the Integrity Commissioner's recommendations regarding code of conduct and workplace harassment investigation be accepted.
Questions or comments? Councilor Ken.
If council recalls, I moved in camera at the end of the last regular meeting. It was regarding the investigations. I had questions. Council received a letter from Paul Cassan, and just generally because it was in confidence. He suggested to us that he would be willing to provide advice on this matter. I wasn't aware the issue would be brought up on the agenda tonight. It would be progressive to deal with this as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Paul isn't available till the 27th at the earliest. I'm of the opinion that as an employer, we should be aware of our options and the consequences of our decisions. I'm of the view that we should meet with him.
Anyone else? Councilor Ron?
I agree, Your Worship, and when you sent that to me, I think I sent you an email suggesting that, but I never got a reply.
I was unaware of the email. Sorry. Councilor Bill?
Did I hear that right? You're suggesting we just wait till we can get him on a teleconference call or something
Have him
like
come
that?
down.
Well, I personally, and he said in the letter, Bill, that
Yeah.
if we had questions, he'd meet with us. I'd like to
Yeah.
meet with him personally.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion.
Anyone else? So we'll
So you can call this to be deferred for the meeting with
we'll call this to be deferred. Do I-
and everybody has to vote on it. Everybody has to vote
Everybody has to vote.
if they want to defer.
Do you want to defer it?
Do you want a motion on that? I'll make a
There
motion.
there is a
The-
motion.
yes.
But that's one of the options to
Okay.
vote on, so
Yes.
then that would be in the minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So all in favor of deferring?
Council's in favor of deferring it.
Say all in favor. Ask me if they're all in favor.
Are you all, are you all in favor of it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what they will. Okay, the next item is item G3, moved by Councillor Bill Foster, seconded by Councillor Heather Malott. Be it resolved that effective October 11, 2018, the Eskimo Police Services Board is hereby disbanded under Section 31 and reinstated as Section 10 Board, with all terms and conditions of members being the same.
Any questions or comments? Councilor Bill?
The Police Services Board has 5 members there now, and with the provincial appointments being very, very slow, over this last 4 years, we've only operated for maybe 6 months with a full contingent. If we were to turn around and reduce the size to 3, there'd be many occasions that you may not even get a quorum, because if someone's off and you're waiting a year and a half, or we waited 2 years to get one provincial appointment. And this is a problem across the province, so I'm suggesting that we continue on with 5, and we can revisit this once we're a little further down the road.
Councilor Bob?
Yeah, I would support Councillor Foster on that. Not reducing the size of the board. I've watched the performance of the province over the last 4 years, and they barely have a quorum sometimes, just due to a lack of membership.
Yeah.
So I don't think now is the time and nor should this council be the one to consider reducing the board.
Right. Okay.
Your worship.
Yes.
I was just asking Bill a question.
Yes.
What brought us to the 5 instead of the 3? Was there something in the Ontario provincial
Legislation allows a town to go, I guess for the size of our town, you could have a
support
group of 3.
Yeah.
And at some point, our town council must have decided 5 was there. And there's another good reason to have 5, and that is you get a little bit of variety in an opinion, okay, and viewpoints. And if you're down to 3 and one person's off, it's really not, you're not going to get a lot of, let's say, good input into a decision. It's better if you've got more, a few people there to get some input.
And so it's perfectly legal to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Most communities, they just continue on with exactly the same people, with an OP, with a new police services board with exactly the same people that you had before.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? All in favor? Carried.
Item G4, moved by Councillor Heather Malott, seconded by Councillor Ron Dupussy. Be resolved that council support the hiring of 2 casual front desk employees.
Questions or comments? Councilor Ron?
I realize that reading the background that this is, I guess, at our complex and whatever, a necessity. And I know it's not mandatory, but I would hope that when we're looking at hiring these people for these casual positions, we would give special consideration to any employees with the police transition or whatever in the town, that they be given should they qualify, of course, special consideration if they could keep some form of employment with us.
Anyone else? All in favor? Carries.
Item G5, moved by Councillor Heather Millar, seconded by Councillor Bill Foster. Be it resolved that the leisure services advertise for the replacement of a ring attendant.
Questions or comments?
I would like to say the same thing, Your Worship. Please give consideration to our employees that may have been displaced.
Right on. Anyone else? All in favor? Carries. All right, concerts and conventions, there are none. Mayor and councilor reports and announcements. Future council committee meetings, corporate service committee meeting of October 2nd at 3 p.m. Regular meeting of council on October the 9th at 7:30 p.m. And we're adjourned. All in favor?
Round table.
Okay?
Round table.
Don't they want to go home?
Well, that too, but
Any questions or comments?
no.
Not for me.
Nothing for me, Your Worship.
No, it's you.
Well, he didn't ask anybody yet.
did.
Sort of.
Did he ask Bob?
And you looked at me
Oh,
closely.
he looked, okay. Yeah. I have one.
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of things, Your Worship. At the last council meeting, Councillor Yoakum, who's chair of Community Services, wasn't here, and I'd asked you if you could bring up about an oil collection station on the agenda, and I didn't see it there. And I don't know if you forgot about it or you posted it to the next
I
meeting.
forgot, but I will.
Because I do still think that's important. There are several people in the community that do their own servicing, and I hate to see that used oil be dumped on the ground or end up in our water systems.
Isn't there a pickup for that?
No, there isn't. And I went to many of the mechanical establishments on my own, and there was one at least that used to take it, and because he was getting so much that he was having to pay to have it picked up, depending on the price of oil, how much you have to pay to dispose of it. So he stopped doing that some time back.
What expression was? Yeah, I forgot. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just, it's getting late in the year and it'll probably be more prevalent next spring. I saw a nice sight the other day. I was going down Highway 6, heading south, and there was a gentleman walking, heading south, and when he got by Giant Tiger, he stopped and he looked, and there was a plastic garbage bag and some drinking straws off the sidewalk over to the side by where the bike racks were. He went over, I don't know who he was, he picked them all up, went out of his way to walk to the refuge container and put it in. And I thought, my God, what a nice thing to see in our community. I wish we would all do it. But I don't know who he was, but I certainly would like to thank him. If I would have known his name, I'd have mentioned it here tonight. I see also we had two young gentlemen from my community, and I only know one by the name of Ben, and the other one is Scott Anderson, who won the bass tournament, and I think it was in the roundabout. It's nice to see, because that's quite an accomplishment. They fish against professionals, and these young gentlemen aren't professionals. They're our local residents, and they won this tournament, so it was nice to see. And the other thing was, Your Worship, I was asked by a couple of residents on Apsey Lake to come and look at the water level, and I went, and it's got to be down. I'm sure maybe our Public Works knows, I don't, but just looking at it, their dock has now a beach in the front of it. It's got to be down 2 feet or more. And I know we've had an awful dry summer and very little rain, but I can't remember. I know we have a bylaw in effect about water usage in the summer for lawns and whatever, but we really don't worry about it enough now, because when we did the upgrades on our water system, we moved our intake line quite a bit out. I don't know if you know where it is, but I remember when they did it. And I think there's something like 35 or 38 feet above the intake, so 2 or 3 feet on the top means absolutely nothing for the town water supply, but it means an awful lot to the residents on that lake. And I don't know if we put in the watering bylaw. Usually it doesn't go into effect until we post it in the local media. but I think it's something we have to look at in the future. I mean, we don't want to see abuse, and I know it was a dry year and the water levels would have certainly dropped because even Clear Lake is down and we don't pull water from it. But I think in the future we have to think of the residents on Absey Lake also, that this water source is not only their water supply, some of them, but it's their recreation and homes that are affected. And I would hope that we would consider that in the future. That's all I have, Your Worship.
Heather, do you have anything?
Good.
Ken?
No, thanks, Chairman.
No, I don't have anything.
Regular meeting conference hereby adjourned.